Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. If you're anything like me, you want more guns. I've got a bunch of guns, and I still always want more. I just finished building this Mark 18, and I already am thinking about the next one. Do I want a CZ Shadow 2? Do I want a Beretta 92? Do I want to build out an MP5K? Yes, to all of those. But the thing is guns are pretty expensive. I mean, relatively. They cost a good bit of money, especially once you start getting into nicer ones. And so then the question becomes, unless you're filthy rich, which I am personally not, is do you use credit to acquire more guns? Is that a smart thing to do or not? And the quick answer is probably no. But I am guilty of using credit in order to build some of my guns. And I'm going to talk about how I've used it. And we're just going to kind of discuss, is it smart to use credit or not? Because you go on a gun website and you see that gun that you want, it's a couple $1,000s maybe, and they've got Credova. Is that a good idea? Well, make sure you're subscribed and let's talk about it. In general, it's probably not a good idea to get yourself into debt to acquire things, whether firearms or whatever. Although, part of life and being an adult, in order to buy my house, I had to borrow a couple $100,000. In order to buy my truck, I had to borrow, a couple $10,000. And I make payments on this every month. And if it wasn't for credit, I wouldn't have this house and I wouldn't have my truck. And so credit is a very useful tool. And if you know how to use it responsibly, it can be a great thing. But it's also something that can get you in a lot of trouble if you're not careful. And so we kind of want to talk about that on both hands. So all these guns that you see behind me, plus all the rest of them that I have, most of them were not bought on credit. I waited until I had the money for them and I bought them outright. But as I've gotten into more, as my tastes have gotten more expensive, that's been a more difficult thing to do, but not impossible. And we're going to talk about that. My situation is a little bit unique because of this YouTube channel, and it doesn't have to be that way. But when I start a build, I feel like I need to keep bringing new episode each week in order to complete the build and keep people interested in it. Whether I really need to do that or I'm just telling myself that is to be debated. But I want to talk about certain ways that you can afford to get the guns that you want if you don't have all the money all at once. Because believe me, I've been there. In fact, I've been there recently. And so I totally get it. And I do think that guns are a worthy thing, like a home, like a car, truck. I think that the Second Amendment is very important, and I think that gun ownership is very important. And so I do think that it's something that if you're going to go into debt over something, guns might not be a bad thing to acquire. Now, do you need 20 guns? Do you need 50? Do you need 100 guns? Probably not. You probably only need one or two. And I say need, not want. I understand if you're like me, you probably want more. One good way to acquire a gun that you can't afford, one thing that I have used in the past that doesn't cost me anything extra, there's no interest involved, you can't really get in any trouble in it, is layaway. So my local gun store is awesome. And once they get to know you really well, like I go in there quite a bit, at least a couple times a week, and I spend a lot of money there. And they offer people that are their regular customers layaway options on firearms. And so if there's something that you want, like I'll be in there looking at something that I know I can't afford today. But the owner, they'll be like, well, we've got layaway, right? He's a smart man, because then you end up buying that thing and you end up spending the full amount. But before we get into the rest of this, let's have a quick word from our channel partner. This video is sponsored by Aura. Aura is peace of mind in a world that is so much online these days. Every time that one of you guys clicks the first link in the description and signs up for aura.com/sawtoothtactical, you help me fund this channel to be able to bring you guys new cool stuff to show. What does Aura offer you? Well, for one, if you use that link, you get 2 weeks free trial. That's 14 days, and it is only $12 a month after that. And for that $12, like I said, you get peace of mind. What they do is that they go online and they find data brokers that have your information, and they submit opt-out requests on your behalf. And then scammers, spammers, all these things online that want to take advantage of you can't get a hold of your information anymore. I've been using it now for months, and it's really helped me out quite a bit. I'm one of those people that really gets sick of getting spam calls, spam emails, all this stuff all the time, and I don't get it anymore ever since I've been using Aura. It is well worth the money, but you also get a lot more than just opt out from data brokers. You get a VPN, home title monitoring, password manager. Basically, all of the stuff that your online security, they just take care of all of it for you. It's super easy to set up. It takes like minutes, and it hardly costs you anything. Think about all the other things that you spend more than $12 a month on. This just, it's nice to not have your information out there anymore and to not have to worry about that stuff anymore. So check out Aura, use my link. You get 14 days, 2 weeks free if you use that link. Again, that's aura.com/sawtoothtactical. I really, really love Aura, and I think you will too. We were talking about layaway, and layaway I think is actually a pretty responsible way to get guns that you can't afford all at once. I've used it for, I think the first one that I used it for was this AK a couple years ago. Yeah, that one I paid full price for just all at once. There's been a couple things. Mostly what I use it for is suppressors. And the reason for that, to me, it is perfect for getting suppressors, especially because until very recently, the wait times take many months. So you pay for your tax stamp now, and then, pay $100, $200 a month until the suppressor is paid off. And every time I've done that, actually that's not true, but generally I have it paid off before my tax stamp is approved. This last time I got a batch approval of the Polonium K and the Weight Machine Mod 1, and I still owed a couple $100, but when I got those approvals, I had the money, paid for the rest of it, took home my suppressors. But that day that I got those approvals, instead of needing the money for 2 whole suppressors, I only owed a couple $100 left because I'd been paying for them for a few months. Now, of course, if you do get these very fast approvals we've been seeing, well, then maybe that doesn't work for you. But so far with suppressors, generally, historically, taking many months, this one took over 11 months. The layaway thing was a great option. Now, another thing that you can use is credit cards. And credit cards can be very dangerous. And so, to think about this carefully, it's probably not a great idea to go into debt to acquire a new gun. And I'll be 100% honest with you guys. I tell myself sometimes that it's okay because of this channel, and I look at it as an investment into growing my YouTube channel. And so I'm like, if I have to buy an optic on a credit card and pay it off over the next couple of months, well, no big deal because I'm investing in my YouTube channel. If you don't have something like that going on, maybe you can't convince yourself of that. But I do think that there are responsible ways to use credit cards as well. And don't take this the wrong way. I am not trying to tell you to go into debt to get your next gun. But if you do want something now rather than later, that is kind of how credit cards work. And as long as you know that you can make the payments consistently, whatever it is, to pay the thing off, well, that is up to you, but you're going to pay interest on it. And this is where I've gotten myself in trouble in the past. When I've been in the middle of a build, whether it was this 14.5 inch or this Mark 18, and I see something on sale, and I'm like, ooh, I better jump on this right now because it's a good deal, but I don't have all the money for it right then. So I put it on my credit card. Well, really I'm not saving money then, because I end up paying interest on that thing if I don't pay it off 100% that month. That's how credit cards work. That's how credit card companies make their money. If you carry a balance, you're going to pay interest on that balance. But there are ways to avoid that as well. There are lots of different terms for different kinds of credit cards. One of the cards that I have is actually a card offered through Amazon. And when I got that card, the only reason I even got it was because this was a while back. On my 16-inch AR, it's got a Sig 1-6 LPVO on it, the Tango MSR LPVO. And I was looking at it on Amazon because you can buy optics on Amazon. You can buy lights. You can buy other gun-related parts and accessories. You do have to be careful. Make sure that you get legitimate ones. But there's a Sig Sauer store. There's an EOTech store. And as long as you buy it from a legitimate source through Amazon, then you don't have anything to worry about. My EOTech's legit. Everything I've gotten off of Amazon, and I've gotten a lot of optics off there, honestly, they are all legit. Now, I would rather support a company like EOTech or Primary Arms in general. But my point is this. I was looking at that optic, and Amazon gave me a credit card offer. And the offer was like $100 off on your first whatever, if you spend a couple $100 or something. And the thing about it is that card through Amazon, for larger purchases, you can actually, instead of paying for it all at once, you can amortize it out over 6 months or a year, interest-free payments. As long as you make your payment on time, you'll never pay a dime of interest. And so I have used that card. For one thing, that day I got that LPVO $100 cheaper than what their listing price was. And then it was, paid out over 6 months, same as cash, 0% interest. So it didn't cost me anything extra. I got the LPVO that I wanted as soon as it shipped to me, and I didn't pay any interest on it. And I've actually gotten a number of optics through Amazon with that card and other things. I got a gun safe the same way. And other things that are not even gun related. And every time I get my statement, I just make sure that I pay those amounts. And I've never had to pay any interest on that card. And so in that way, I've been able to use credit to get the things that I want now. And it hasn't cost me anything extra in the long run. Now, I have another credit card that is not a deal like that. It's just a regular credit card. And I've used that for a couple of things too, in order to finish builds, in order to have an episode next week when I'm doing a build series on the channel. And like I said, I've kind of convinced myself that that's okay because of the channel. I know whatever. And I know that I'm going to end up paying interest on some of those things. But I make sure that I keep it under control and that I'm able to pay them off in a timely manner without paying too much interest. I make sure I never miss a payment. I definitely pay well over the minimum each month, you know what I mean? And each time, I racked up a little bit when I built this 14.5-inch. That gun was like $4 freaking grand. But you know what? I paid it all off before I started the Mark 18 build. And that's kind of what I do for myself to keep myself under control. Instead of just getting one gun after the next, I make sure that if I do use credit, that I pay it off before I use more credit to get into another gun. And I don't think that it's the most responsible thing in the world, and I'm not telling you guys to go out and put a bunch of guns on credit cards. But one thing that it has allowed me to do is to be able to acquire these things that you see behind me, but still have my money, instead of spending all the cash that I've got in my bank account, I could still afford to pay all of my other bills. I could still afford to get ammo, to go shooting, to put gas in my car, to feed my family while I pay off the most recent build or something. Whereas I wouldn't really be able to build one of these if I just paid for it all at once. Like I said, I am not super wealthy. I'm doing just fine, but that's where I'm at. And I do think that if you can keep yourself responsible and keep things under control, that guns are, in my opinion, a worthy thing to get. And especially when we're looking at an election coming up and we're looking at one side being totally into banning assault rifles, assault weapons, red flag, all these things, all this anti-two-way stuff they want to implement. And so I do think that if there's ever a time to acquire the guns that you think you might need, even if you can't necessarily afford it all at once right now, I don't think that you should feel guilty about using a little bit of credit in order to get something now before you might not be able to. Now, I don't want to be a fearmonger, and generally, every time there's an election, gun sales, ammo sales go up. But you know what? They haven't taken our guns away yet. So you'll probably be just fine. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I have the ammo and the firearms that I need before this election goes down, before whatever goes down, and hopefully nothing goes down. But I think that it's good to be prepared. But at the same time, just don't screw yourself. Now, what do I think about Credova and these ones that are, advertised all over every online gun seller? Honestly, I haven't looked into them too much. I've mostly seen negative experiences from people. People getting something, not reading the fine print, and then whatever gun they got ended up costing them, 1.5, 2 times as much as the sale price of that gun was. They have to make money. They're a business. And so they're going to charge you a big interest rate if you need to use them in order to get a gun. The way I use credit, like I said, I don't use it to get a whole gun. I've never put a whole gun on a credit card. But like in the midst of an expensive build, I've put a mod light on a credit card. Or I've put an EOTech on a credit card. I think that that is an okay thing to do. And maybe I'm just trying to convince myself of this. But not really, because every single time I've paid it off before the next build. And I think that if you can do that, and if you understand that it's going to cost you a little bit more in interest, then, it's your life. At the same time, I do think that if you can avoid using credit, that is probably the more responsible, the smarter thing to do. But a lot of us in this economy can't afford to put down $3,000 on a new rifle. And not that I'm saying that you need a $3,000 rifle, but if you want a really nice rifle, this is going to cost you some money. But you can also build it out over time. You could buy a lower receiver, a trigger, an upper receiver, a barrel, a handguard, and you can stretch these things out over a long period of time. And in fact, that is the biggest way I've been able to afford some of these builds. I just haven't stretched them out over as much time as I would probably if I didn't have this YouTube channel. If I wasn't trying to have a new build episode each week or something, well, then I'd probably take a lot longer building one of these guns and not use credit, because that is the more responsible thing to do. But at the same time, if it's the difference between you draining your bank account in order to acquire a firearm or being able to pay for one over a couple months, as long as you understand what you're getting yourself into, I don't really think there's anything wrong with that. When I bought my house, I know that I'm paying a lot more over 30 years than what the sale price of the house is. I'm paying all that interest. But that's what you have to do unless you just have $500,000 sitting around. You have to borrow that money, and the bank that you borrow it from, they need to make money. And so you're gonna pay for that. And that's how that works. Credit makes things possible, but it's gonna cost you something. So as long as you're okay with that cost, well, then make things possible. If you're not, then save up your money. Work hard. I make sure that I can afford these things by working 7 days a week. I have a full-time job, I have another business on the side, and I've got this YouTube channel. And, and it makes it work for me. But you got to do what you got to do. If you got anything out of this video, please give me a like. Make sure you subscribe to Sawtooth Tactical. Share this with anyone that you know that might benefit from this information. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped to get clapped.